Alright, cadets, Dr. Cook here. We're going to give a review prior to WPR 4. Alright, so if you go through the whole list of learning objectives, I compiled those all. There's a PDF on Blackboard that gives the specific objectives per lesson. But here I've broken down kind of the key areas of all of those. So if you look through this list, these are all things you should know, be able to answer questions about, and do for this WPR. So grab this slide, make sure, use it as a checklist of everything we learned in this block of instruction. All right, first one is AGADAP. All right, make sure you understand the steps of the course of action development process. All right, what AGADAP stands for, what tasks go into each of those so you can execute this to get your mission done. All right, decisive point. All right, the decisive point is this part of the battle or the fight where you have irreversible momentum that's going to achieve your purpose, right? That you're going to win the fight. It's that time where you say, man, there's not much the enemy can do to stop us now. We are going to win this thing. We haven't won it yet, but we're going to win it. All right, this is a little area where I've seen a lot of cadets having some problem understanding decisive point, okay? Your decisive point is not your platoon's task and purpose. All right, you should hit something in the battle or have a plan so that your conditions are set to win the fight before you've actually done it, right? If it's still in question whether or not you're going to win all the way up until it's over, that's probably not a good plan. All right, so make sure you're not using your task and your purpose as your decisive point. Find something earlier. All right, also make sure you don't just copy the company commander's decisive point. Company commander has a different fight. They're looking across all three platoons in the company. All right, you need to look at your plan and decide on what your decisive point is to achieve your piece of the company commander's plan. All right. Now, you also have to give justifications about why that decisive point will lead to mission success. All right. Now, that should be something that explains why getting to the decisive point will almost guarantee that you're going to win the fight, that you've got irreversible momentum, that there's not much the enemy can do to stop you from then on. All right? Your justification cannot just say, because it's the mission, because at that point we have won. All right? That would be an indicator that you're too late in the fight, right? You want to know that you're going to win earlier than actually winning. Now, we're talking about decisive point. I want to put that up against decisive operation. All right, that's a different concept. So as you lay out your squads, you've got one of them is going to be your decisive operation. That's the one that achieves the platoon's task and purpose. So decisive operation is the one that will actually win the fight for you. All right, and then your supporting operations set conditions for that to happen. All right. That's different from your decisive point. They both got the word decisive. There's a decisive point somewhere earlier than the end of the fight. Decisive operation, the one that will win the fight. All right. Now, as examples of these, okay, let's say our mission is to destroy the enemy on the objective in order to prevent them from using the area, whatever. All right. My decisive operation is the squad that has the task and purpose to destroy the enemy in order to, right? The decisive point should not be the destruction of the enemy, right? That's too late. My decisive point might be, I've gotten a squad through the breach as we started onto the objective, right? I've got a squad on the objective, things like that. And then your justification is, because as long as I have that much combat power behind the enemy's wire or on the objective or there's not much the enemy can do to stop us. They don't have enough firepower. I can always bring in more as long as that's there, right? So that will lead to you being able to achieve your destruction of the enemy. All right, another example, maybe we're trying to clear a village of enemy presence in order to da-da-da. All right, the decisive operation is the squad that's going to do the actual clearing and get that enemy out of there. Now, maybe I've got a supporting operation. All right, my other two squads are isolating the enemy, right? Or we've got a cordon encircling that little village. Okay, that might be the decisive point. The decisive point is I've established this cordon, I've established isolation, so therefore the enemy can't get in or out. And that means once my decisive operation goes in, there's not much the enemy can do because I've got them contained with these supporting operations around them. All right? So we can take as long as we need to continue clearing that village because we've got an isolating force or a cordon force around them that's going to keep them where we want them. All right, so that's the difference between decisive point, decisive operation, and how you give a justification. All right, for offensive operations, make sure you understand the 4 types of offense, which is movement to contact, attack, exploitation, and pursuit. You got to know those 4. Now, we focused the rest of the course on attack as the only type of offense we've been talking about, but just know the other 3. Now, within attack, we've got forms of maneuver. These are how we maneuver our forces on the battlefield to execute an attack. All right, so understand what they are, know this list, and go back and review the other video if you need to about what each of these forms of maneuver are and how they work. I'll also tell you this, when you answer questions on the WPR, when you're putting together your plan for your final op order, all right, make sure you're consistent. All right, I've seen some examples of cadets in the written words of their concept statements saying that they're going to use an envelopment, and then they give a picture in the sketch that's a penetration, possibly, or something like that, where they don't match up, right? So make sure you know what they are, and you're not just throwing words around, and that everything's consistent, that your words and your schemes of maneuver and your concepts all match each other with what your chosen form of maneuver is, and you're just using one of them. All right, phase of the operation. All right, it's important to phase out our operations and understand what all the things are. Key point here is make sure you're considering what are your actions before the objective, on the objective, and after the objective. All right, those should definitely get broken apart. But even after that, it's not doctrinally required, but we are highly, highly recommending, and you should know the 5 phases that we're suggesting you break these down into, okay? You can give them slightly different names depending on what you're doing for a mission, but really we're talking about a preparation phase, getting things ready, a movement phase to get ourselves out to the battlefield, a set conditions phase where we get everything set for where we need our troops to initiate the attack. Then we have a phase 4 that's the actual actions on the objective, the attack itself, the assault. And then final phase 5, even after we've been on the objective, we have to reset for the next one. So you can call that transition, you can call that consolidation, reconsolidation, prepare for counterattack if that's the mission, return, things like that. Understand those 5 phases. It's a really good structure for how to handle an attack. And then you can lay out your phases, and we use phase lines to designate where those things happen. So we can make sure we have good definitions of when we go from one phase to another and control our troops, right? So during the movement phase, we do not want to be forward of phase line Bravo. That'll be too close to the enemy, whatever, things like that. All right, so we can use our phase lines to control those things. All right, course of action, statement, and sketch. So I've shown you just a picture here what the battle book slide might look like. When you do your sketch, all right, remember that it's just a sketch. It's kind of that back of a napkin kind of thing that shows how you're going to use your combat power. Now, it should really focus on the actions on the objective part, but also shows how we get there and just lays out for everyone where those phase lines are and where things are in relation to each other as the ORP, forward to phase line Bravo, behind phase line Bravo, things like that. All right, it needs to cover the entire fight from the LD all the way to the LOA. All right, all of that. Don't leave out portions of your fight. All right, but focus the details around what's going on the objective. All right, make sure you're using graphic control measures. Make sure it's got tactical task symbols, but there's no enemy symbols on it. There's no friendly unit symbols, no terrain unless you got a limited small amount that might be key. Like if you need to show a hill to make it clear that one force goes around the hill a different way or something like that. But largely it shouldn't be any terrain there. It's not a to-scale thing. It doesn't overlay on a map. It just gives us an idea of how all the moving pieces will go. Now, on your COA statement, all right, that's a bit of that Mad Lib that we're going to fill in, and the battle book already has some things there to help you with it. Now, there's just some things I've seen as we go through there. All right, now, very first line, the purposes operation is put your platoon's purpose. The purpose is your purpose. All right, that's it. Now the next part is about your decisive operation. Your decisive point. Make sure that you give a decisive point and not your task and purpose. Okay, so decisive to this operation is opening a breach lane. Decisive to this operation is setting the outer cordon and isolating the objective or something like that. And then why is it decisive? All right, we talked the last slide about how to give a justification. All right, why would it lead to irreversible momentum that will lead to success? Not because it's the mission. All right, we will accomplish this by using, you got to put in a form of maneuver, envelopment, penetration, flank attack, things like that. And then we go through and we list off the task and purpose for each of our elements, the decisive operation and all of our supporting operations, okay? Make sure that you use a tactical task, okay? Task, attack is not a task, okay? We need to say something like, attack to seize, right? So we're going to seize, we're going to destroy, we're going to clear, we're going to breach. Those are tactical tasks. All right? And then your purposes, make sure your purposes nest with higher. So your decisive operation should have a purpose that somewhat matches your own platoon purpose, because that's the decisive operation. Your supporting operation should have ones that make sense with how they nest to support that and make it happen. All right. Purpose of enablers by warfighting function. Think about your warfighting functions. Okay, we have 6 of them. So we're talking about fires, we're talking about intel, we're talking about protection, support, supply, those kind of things. So make sure you're using the enablers that you have and giving them a purpose in the fight. And the last thing is this end state broken out by enemy friendly terrain and civilian. Make sure that that describes the situation at the end of the fight. It's kind of like a checklist of, I know I am done with this mission when, right? And then what would be all the things that are going to tell you that the mission is over with, okay? So if you've done all the things that you've listed as an end state, you should consider yourself mission complete, all right? If you do all the things on that checklist and you still wouldn't say, oh, I might not be done yet, then you're missing something in your end state. All right, so think through that. All right, scheme and maneuver overlays. All right, when you do these, make sure that you have adequate graphic control measures to describe everything that's happening. All right, I should pretty much be able to read your scheme and maneuver and understand how troops are going to move around on the battlefield and what they're going to do just from that. And then the text is something that would color it out, all right, to fill it out. So that means make sure you've got routes, you've got ORPs shown, you've got checkpoints you might need, rally points, that you're showing axis of advance. Orders of march should be shown on that, okay? So the icons of the units are in order to show who goes first, second, third, all right, or shows the actual location, which squad is occupying which support by fire position, which squad is the one that's moving around a certain hill to get to an attack position, things like that. Right. Make sure you can demonstrate when you look at it that there are plans to avoid fratricide. You've got some controls there to prevent fratricide. That means using phase lines on the objective so that you can control the movement of the troops on that versus where the support by fire is. You've got direct fire control measures, target reference points that line up with your plan to limit where your fires are going so you don't have fratricide, things like that. Make sure that that's all there and is clear. Make sure it makes some tactical sense. Right? One part of that is you don't want to just, everybody's going to charge across the big open field and the enemy's going to open up on us with their machine gun and we're probably never going to get the objective. That would not make tactical sense. The other part of this tactical sense, I hit it at before, all right, if you've said in your concept that you're going to do an envelopment, it should look like an envelopment when I look at your overlay, all right? Don't make it look like you're doing a frontal assault after you've said envelopment somewhere else or something like that, all right, so that I can understand what's going on clearly. And then you've got to have all of that overlay admin data, make sure that's there. This graphic here cuts that out because I've zoomed in. So you're unclassified in 3 places, top, bottom, and in the description block. The info block has a description of the overlay, what it's titled, all right? If it's just one phase, it can say phase 2 overlay, all right? Your name, the date, time group of it, that it's unclassified, what map sheet you're using, make sure that's all there, north seeking arrow, grids to line it up on the map. All right, your fires target worksheet, all right? This is your TT LODAC, right? Now, when you fill this out, make sure you hit all the key points, all right, that your target includes a description, and make sure that you're using the target number block you were assigned. Don't try and use someone else's target numbers, all right? Your trigger, think about what is going to make me call for this target. What condition says, oh, I need to call this in now? All right, that's your description of your trigger for this, all right? It could just be because it's 9 o'clock and I'm going to drop rounds so that I get there. Or maybe it's because first squad crossed phase line red. I don't know. All right, location. You got to have a minimum of 6, but really give 8. Give an 8-digit grid. Make sure you give the grid properly. All right, linear targets need a grid and a length. How long are they? And then an attitude, which is what compass direction are they laying at, right? So are they laying 0, which is straight due north-south? are they laying at 45 degrees at an angle? All right. You got to have an observer. Who is going to be the observer? And they must be able to see the target to possibly adjust rounds to confirm that they landed in the right spot. So who is it going to be? And during that part of the mission, are they in a location that can see it, not on the other side of a hill that's covered with jungle? All right, delivery method. How are we going to get these rounds there? What are you going to ask for? All right, 81 millimeter mortar, 155 howitzers, 105 howitzers. What do you got? Now, don't just make that up. Take a look at the op order from company and see what assets do you have. All right, and if you have priorities of fire, then that's probably your primary method of delivery. All right, now maybe you're the alternate, your number 2 priority for fires. All right, so what is the best fires that you might have available? All right, and how do they stack up in order? So maybe you've got priorities of fire from the mortars and you are alternate priority for the 105s. Well, then mortars is your primary, 105s is your alternate. Maybe you don't have priorities of fire, and then you just got to look across it and think about, well, I don't have priorities of fire for anything, but I'm the alternate for the 105s, and I'm not anything for the mortars. So that means my primary that I got the best chance at is the one I'm alternate priority on, which is the 105s. And then after that, I can use an alternate with the 81s, right? So just think that through. Attack guidance. All right, what does the target need? Are you going to request HE rounds? Do you want smoke rounds? Do you want aluminum rounds, right? That's very much in your control of what you're asking for and how you're going to use them. All right, and then what kind of fuse might you want to put on them? Do you want a variable time fuse? Do you want a point detonation fuse, right? That's thinking about what the target is, what'll be best for it. All right, go back and watch that lesson if you need to. And then your comms plan, how are you going to call for it? Take a look at the company commander's op order, because there's probably some information there that might tell you about what fires nets to use, okay? Typically, you might see something like the company's fires net is your primary and your alternate to jump up to battalion fires net, all right? So that's usually a good guess, but take a look at the company op order, see what it tells you. Now, key point on all of this, that's how to fill it out, but make sure it supports the ground maneuver plan. All right, you can't just throw fires targets all over the place. It should make sense with what's going on in your scheme of maneuver, and you should be able to give a justification, explain why that target that you're asking does something for your maneuver force to help them win the fight. Now, you also got to do a fires overlay to show where these things are and help you see them. Again, we got to have all of our overlay admin data, and then we got to show our targets. All right. We want to make sure that we've got targets that support us from the LD all the way out to the objective. All right, throughout the battlefield, there are needs for them, not just on the objective itself. All right, we've got on the objective and then beyond the objective. So once we've completed our mission, we're resetting for a counterattack or whatever we're doing, we might need some locations out there of potential enemy reinforcement routes. All right, and then the last thing, I'll just give you an example here of, it's really simple overlay because all we've got is admin data and the targets themselves. Make sure you give the crosses or the linear targets there for point and linear targets, and that they're labeled with their target numbers that correspond with your target data sheet, and that they all are proper target numbers that are assigned in your target block. All right, tasks to subordinate units and coordinating instructions. Make sure you understand the difference, okay? Tasks to subordinate units have to do with that one unit, and it's essential to them. All right, make sure you include the task and purpose you gave them because that's their first task. All right, but any other key tasks that they got to do to make the mission happen. Coordinating instructions are things that apply to more than one unit. All right, they were trying to coordinate them together, or you're just putting out information that everyone in the platoon needs to do, and you want them to all know it. All right. Now, in your coordinating instructions, you're going to have some information requirements. Now, I've laid them out here. We talk about some of these terms. All right, the first thing you got to make sure you include is CCIRs, Commander's Critical Information Requirements. All right, key thing about those are all things that help the commander or you make decisions. All right, they're all about decision making. I need to know X in order to decide what I'm going to do with Y. All right, now they come in 2 flavors, so that's why they're shown under. There's friendly force information requirements. Those are the ones about ourselves, friendly force information. All right, what do I need to know about us to make a decision about how to conduct the fight? The other one is priority intelligence requirements. What do I want to know about the enemy to make decisions about my fight? All right, I want to know where the machine gun is located because that'll decide if I go left or right up the hill. All right, things like that. And then you've got these essential elements of friendly information. Right? These are kind of the opposite of a CCIR. These aren't things I need to know. We already know them. They're about us. These are things I don't want the enemy to know. All right, things the enemy might really like to know that's going to help them, but I don't want them to know. I don't want them to know how much combat power I have. I don't want them to know what my route is. I don't want them to know some piece of information about my weaknesses. I don't want them to know my weaknesses. I don't want them to know my strengths. I don't want them to know what I know about them, things like that. What do I not want the enemy to know is an EEFI. All right, so understand what these all are and how they're used, and you got to list those out under your coordinating instructions. All right, last topic I've got here is about timelines, all right, and how we do our time analysis. Now you've got the battle book page where you give an actual timeline, make sure that's in time order. But for planning that out, we also have a page here that gives it a bit graphically. So I filled this one out, but we can talk through all the different things, thinking about what are my requirements from hire, what operational things are going on, when is my attack, what's my travel times, when do I plan to LD, things like that are there. Planning functions, all right, when am I going to give my op order, when do I need some time to plan, leaders recon is shown on here. Enemy things that I might know. All right, I don't have a lot on this as an example, but things like, look, I'm going to initiate my attack. How far away is their QRF? How long will it take the enemy QRF to get there? And then when do I expect reinforcements to arrive? That would be an example of something you could put down about the enemy. Maybe you've got intel that an enemy replacement unit is on its way and you know when they're going to arrive. Maybe you've got intel about when a key leader is going to be on site, when they arrive, when they leave, and you got to show that so you make sure your mission is timed properly to either be there when they're there or not be there when they're not there, right? And then your light weather data you can fill out to help you see how all these different times line up, right? So I can understand what's going on with the weather while I'm trying to do my rehearsals, what's going on with the weather while I'm going to conduct my mission, and how does my platoon op order and the back brief to the company commander and when I'm LDing all line up with each other. So you can look across this timeline and understand it. Gives you some structure. All right. Okay, that's all I've got for review for today. Everybody study hard. Make sure you're ready. Go through the information in the read ahead packet. You know your unit. You know the types of things we're going to ask you. We're going to be asking you about writing an op order. So you can start all of your planning now and be ready for that WPR.